this time we are being recorded on Acton Public TV, and that's where we're coming from this evening. So if anybody is recording this, please let the chair know at this time. Hearing none, I'll move on. Do we have any public participation this evening? Seeing that we do not, we will go on to our next. We would like to introduce the town moderator. So welcome.
Thank you. Should I say stuff? Wait.
Yeah.
You should stand at the microphone, Joanne.
Yes, I should.
This will be a really short meeting if you don't say something.
Very short.
Joanne Berry, Herringview, town moderator. So thanks for having me, putting me on the agenda. I don't have a ton to say yet since I haven't really done anything too much. Everybody whose terms are up are now renewed. I did do that, signed, since that was the word I got that people didn't want to. I just would like to take this opportunity since this is on television, first of all, I look forward to hearing from people about ways to improve town meeting, increase participation, and Mr. Benson is working on that as one of the selectmen's goals, so I will be working with him on that. But obviously any member of the public who feels inclined to contact me, I believe I have an email through Town Hall, so I would welcome any input on that. There's always ways to make town meeting better and make more people understand how it actually works. You just don't show up and vote like on American Idol. It's a little bit more of a process than that, which all you folks know, of course. So hopefully next year's town meeting, and any that we might have in the fall, if we're still lined up to do that, fall, early winter.
Oh, we're lined up for a special town meeting.
For a special town meeting.
Do you have a date?
We do not have a date.
But for people at home, November, December, sometime in there, it's my understanding. Or some other time, if that was. And then the other thing that I'd just like to say, that while this committee is stable at the moment, whenever and there are openings, I will be wanting to make sure that we have diverse perspectives and experience and folks who work well together on a committee, which I understand you guys do and enjoy serving on this committee. So thanks for doing that, and I don't think I have anything else to say unless anybody has a question.
Questions?
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next agenda is the point of view drafting group. So go ahead. You would like
Pick
to?
me, pick me.
By all means.
One.
You can rip it out of my cold dead hands.
I know Sahana. I know Sahana wanted to be part of that as well.
All right. Is she coming tonight? Do you know if she's out of town? What did she say? Okay.
I checked email very sporadically over the weekend.
All right.
I'm willing to do it as well.
Okay.
I like doing it.
Okay.
I think we're below quorum still.
I don't mind sitting in so I can kind of learn along.
Sure.
Yeah.
You don't count for a quorum.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. So I can do whatever I want.
I'd like to point out that we should run this by council, because it is possible that regardless of whether there's a quorum present or not, if a subcommittee is put together, it must post its agenda and allow citizens to attend in an open meeting sense. So even though nothing gets passed there but brought back here, I think we might still be required to post it so many days in advance. And if it's at your house, be prepared for people to come and want to sit there and watch you deliberate.
I don't think we've ever done it at anyone's house. I think we've only done it in the small conference room in the town hall.
Yep. But I mean, you could tell from the vast population of people here tonight and prior nights, it's probably unlikely, but I just point out to the committee that we want to make make sure we're on the right side of that.
But there's always someone.
So, you have to do that and
I will do it.
so we can get a conference from at, town hall.
I'm gonna sleep it
Do you?
over. I know, but I'm sure we can make this happen.
And,
You know the person.
and just,
Other people can do other
what popped into my mind as well is you may also be required to take minutes,
Yes.
Yes.
publish those minutes and approve them in your own subcommittee, but I mean, the minutes don't have to be anything extensive, because you're obviously, your products will be brought here and
Right.
and discussed, but, should you talk about 6 things and only 4 of them get onto the point of view, it might behoove you to mention the other 2 that you did not.
All right. I will be prepared.
Would the minutes have to come back to this, to the?
No.
Nope,
Just
they
to
have to be signed, they have to be approved by the subcommittee.
That subcommittee.
And they don't need to be posted, they just need to be made available.
Okay. So, we can do first, as we have it also to establish a group that, first pass on some topics that you may want to see covered in this year's point of view.
Anything you wanna add that we're not just updating?
We clearly need to talk about the debt overrides.
Okay?
Okay.
Both town and
And district.
And district.
It's all our taxes. Maybe if my tax bill's going up, I wanna know why, by a whole lot.
any ideas?
Yeah, what, you're talking about topics for the, it's hard to hear.
Yeah, topics for the point of view, sorry.
Anything
Yeah, I think,
I'll try
with
yelling.
with the new, with the future holding, some financial, well, I wouldn't say surprises, but challenges in the sense of, you know, the capital requirements for school systems and fire stations and so on. I think now is it's not too soon to really to be talking about strategies for financing, as she said, debt override, debt exclusion, whatever our options may be. You know, exploiting, finally taking advantage of our AAA bond rating, if we have to go to the market to borrow money or
If,
pay out of pocket.
If.
Thinking optimistically that we won't need to go to the public market maybe. Ms. Noon, you have any thoughts?
I'd have to take a look at the last couple. I'd say that every year we say the same thing about buying land with no sense of purpose, and it seems to fall on deaf ears. So we may have to rephrase how we're making that point. I still think it's a point that needs to be made. And yeah, the typical where are our reserves, and might actually want to take another look at OPEB, because we haven't taken a deep look at it for a couple of years. Town's in good shape, school's okay, but we tend to brush it off as everything's fine, and it changes every couple of years.
You may want to think about doing that as an overall
Yeah.
finance committee. Tom?
Well, I've only done a couple of these. I guess my overall comment would be to keep it as simple as we can and maybe even look to abbreviate it. It gets to be a pretty lengthy document if you're speaking to each and every page with the audience. I would ask the dangerous question, you know, why do we do it? Is there real value in doing this with the constituents that we do report to? Again, I've only done one. I think people were polite, you know, they listened to it, but I'm not sure there was a whole lot of give and take and value, to be honest. Now, I know this becomes the narrative in the annual meeting warrant article, and we put our, you know, the point of view becomes our message, if you will. So I think it needs to be done, but I guess I do just question why we do it.
I mean, the outreach.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
yeah.
May I respond?
Go right ahead.
It is important to remember that while we spend a lot of time with our point of view as the outreach to the PTOs, PTSOs, and other organizations, the point of view first and foremost, and its single greatest import, the single most important thing that it is the rules by which we get to try and beat up the Board of Selectmen at the ALG. If we do not lay it down early and make it clear in the first part of the year, then as we get closer to February, March, then ALG runs away with, hey, we didn't know, this wasn't a priority of yours. While I think it's a great benefit that we're able to go and evangelize what we do as a committee to the PTSOs, first and foremost, it is a voted on stake in the ground for our interaction with the Board of Selectmen, and that's its single greatest value. That's why we have to do it
And as I said,
early.
a lot of that finds its way into the warrant as well.
It
So
does too.
It's got to be done.
Yes.
I guess I was thinking more about the outreach, and
So-
maybe we reconsider that. Just a thought.
So one question would be, do we have to go to everybody, or can we have a meeting or two during our season when we invite the public, we publicize it and say we're gonna deliver our point of view,
And see,
and see if the public shows up.
They won't.
They won't, yeah. We'll
Well,
fraction.
some of the outreach, I think we had about 30 people at Chinese school, but other times I've had about 4 or 5.
We had 25 at Conant.
Yeah.
but they were
Conant-
there anyway.
and
They
Conant-
had- It was their meeting, and they put us on the agenda.
But Conant last year, when we went, there were only 5 or 6 people, but they were so impressed and excited that they said, when we have you next year, we're gonna have it at this specific meeting, because we know there'll be a big attendance, and they really found value. And I get what you mean when we were at McCarthy Town, we were tacked on to the end of a late meeting, and you could tell they were.
Yeah.
So, but I still think it's worth what happened at Conant, what happened at the Chinese language school. I actually think that proves the point. It's not a ton of effort on our part
No.
to go out and do those.
No?
I think maybe we should do it both ways, and also have it a
Sure.
meeting, and let the PTSOs know that we're having it at this meeting,
Yeah, sure.
and encourage your members in your school community to attend.
God knows we
No.
go over it enough. It would be easy enough to invite them to one of our last, final get together and have them come to present it at the same time.
Al?
No, I really have nothing to add. I haven't done one of these, so I'm eager to learn.
Yes, well, I'm not sure whether it's part of the point of view, but what struck me at the last meeting or two was how much I know and how little I know. Meaning, in a couple of years of being on this committee, I've asked questions and I've dived into the details, and then occasionally I pull back to the forest for the trees and say, oh wow, that means, and I think I used as the example last meeting, how much do we spend on seniors? What is the actual subsidy that we put for the senior community in the town? Because we heard a lot at town meeting about, well, what are you doing for seniors? Or we have to do this for seniors because we don't do much for seniors. And what that means to me is, in prior lives, I came up with what I call statements of the obvious. Things that you could easily add 2 numbers and divide by a third number and come up with a number, but we never do. And so I wonder if we took a program cut on some of the budget and looked and said, well, this is what we spend for seniors. And yes, some comes from the state and some comes from some other place, but this is what the town does, and we have so many seniors, and it's so much dollars per senior. We've been a long time since we actually had a statement that says, here's how much we spend for schools, and here's how many students, and this is what we spend per student. But I don't know, we sometimes say it, but I'm wondering if part of our statements of the obvious would be just to give citizens a sense of, we clearly talk about 2/3 of our budget being for schools, but let them understand the value that we place on education and how much we actually spend, or the value we place on seniors and how much we spend, even transportation. How many dollars do we, as a town, spend for transportation? In total, what does that mean cost per ride? And are we subsidizing it? not in a bad way, but perhaps in a good way, saying it's one of our priorities. And, you know, the dollar that people pay when they get into the bus can't be paying for the real cost for that ride. So I'm just wondering if either part at the end of the point of view, because I know the point of view focuses on the rules we play by, but to have some of those statements of the obvious that would give the townspeople as well as even me an opportunity to say, wow, yeah, okay, this is how we're standing back what our priorities in spending are. By the way, there's also some gems in that 100-page annual report that we get, which I encourage the finance committee to look at and read. And Steve so adeptly said that only maybe 40 pages of it or 30 pages of it are, you know, really chock full of interesting things that wouldn't bore you to death unless you're a CPA. But in any event, that's what I'm pitching for the point of view.
Yeah, I think an interesting adjunct to that is, and we have talked about this in the past, and I think made some progress, but if we had like a financial dashboard of key metrics, like, for example, the tax burden of the homeowner, it's, you know, the amount of taxes as as a percentage of his home value. So, you know, even though the tax rate we might be perceived to be high, you know, if you look at the tax burden, what it's worth, what he pays in relationship to the value of his of his or her home, you know, it might not be that bad compared to other towns. Or, you know, how much is the dollar cost per child to educate a child in the AB regional school system, things of that nature, and show trends over time. What, you know, some of the metrics that Jeff was talking about, and you know, build on the you know, maybe some OPEB information, just like a dashboard with some numbers, or a chart, maybe maybe not even numbers, but just a graph or two that shows, yeah, we're heading in the right direction, or, you know, things are stable, or, you know, they're declining. You know, the taxes are getting higher, our burden is getting untenable. You know, something that make it, you could just look at it quickly and see that what our financial position is. That, you know, it's a good trend, or bad trend, or things are stable.
I wanted to comment on specifically calling out the number of dollars spent on the seniors versus spent on students. This was brought up a couple of years ago, and the reason why it was not adopted at that time is we were specifically trying to avoid an us versus them mentality between or an us versus them rift between the parents of school-aged children and retirees in town. I would say that the cost per student is advertised pretty heavily during the school budget Saturday. $15,198 per student last year. Just, you know, it's burned into your brain after a while. But I would, by all means, it might be something for us to make sure that we go and learn and know. I am a little concerned about it being easily pointed to during a town meeting as, well, we spend 15 grand per student and we only spend whatever the number is per senior, and now all of a sudden we can have I worry about a rift mentality in trying to pit one group of the electorate against the other. A separate topic that I would like to mention that I'd like to see in the point of view this year, and I realize I'm fighting last year's battle. We spent a lot of time at the last town meeting on issues that basically, I believe, all boil down to whether or not we're ever going to get to 40B. And while I was very encouraged to hear the latest news at the last meeting that I attended, which was 2 meetings ago, and I love you, John, but I want to hear somebody from the town staff come and say the exact same thing and give us an update on that, and have that be part of be a slide in our point of view as well. What are our plans on getting to 40B? Thank you.
I appreciate not wanting to do a seniors versus students argument going, but I think parents with kids also need to understand how much of the town's money goes, or how much of the taxes doesn't help everyone else in the town.
Well,
There's this amorphous, it helps our home values, which I completely agree does, but I think maybe if we presented it as citizens
I
versus
think-
students, we could get away with.
I think holding up
Quantifying it.
the average cost per student and then holding up the average tax bill and making it very clear that unless you've got a house that's, $1,200,000, if you've got a kid in the school district, then you are taking more in services than you are paying. I think that's a perfectly fine thing to do. But I think if you put it a easy, stark number of this is what we pay per kid, and this is what we pay, this is the subsidy we give to seniors, and this is the subsidy we give to transportation, I worry that that's too easily boiled into an us versus them.
Well, and I respectfully disagree, because it is what it is.
Okay.
And I think that as soon as we decide this metric we'll publish, but this one we won't publish, we've now made a political decision. And I don't want to make a political decision. I believe that it should stand on its merits. I think we do pay a lot of money for a lot of good things in the town. And I don't think that it's for us to decide whether what that balance has to be. It's the body politic that decides that, and we just report on it. And we may have opinions on should you buy land and kind of put it away, or buy a building with no use in mind. That's clearly something we should have some recommendations about. But I don't think that it's bad to talk about such things as when we bought the parking lot, are we going to have enough revenue to pay that, or are we subsidizing commuters, paying more to maintain parking lots than what we charge them? Well, it turns out we're not, and we are getting money, but we are using some of that money that subsidizes parking to bolster transportation. And so when we talk about the actual cost of transportation, we wouldn't have to include the part that's being subsidized from the parking lots, because that's all part of a plan that says, we have a little surplus here and we subsidize a place here. That's fine. So I think I strongly believe in the open communications, and unfortunately, when I talk about statements of the obvious, it was some of those aha moments that I had when I stood back and said, wait a minute, I get 16 pages and there's 120 numbers, but if I get back from it, wow, I didn't realize it was 15,192, or if it were per person, or whatever the number is. So I think we should do more of that and not less of it.
Steve?
Well, as fascinating as this discussion is, I wanted to get back to what Tom was talking about and pick up on something Joanne mentioned. The single piece of advertising we have for town meeting is the warrant, other than electronic message boards, which you can't read if you drive over 35 miles an hour. And it is a singularly bad piece of advertising. It doesn't look nice.
Looks like an Action Unlimited.
Yeah. It's densely worded in legalese. If you want to know how much a warrant article is going to spend to buy a piece of land, it's not in there. We don't put a lot of numbers in there. One of the few places you'll find some numbers is in the Finance Committee message. And furthermore, most people get it, whatever the legal requirement is, 10 days before the meeting. So we are saying to our legislative body with town meeting, here's 10 days notice to come to a meeting, but we're not really going to give you any information. Come and listen and be the body politic. In this case, it's a pretty skinny body because it's about 400 people. Our point of view is pretty much cast, not quite in concrete, but pretty solidly by the end of January. We published it, you know, we've had feedback, you know. I know we get it out earlier, but it needs to be socialized with Board of Selectmen, School Committee. So I know it might cost money. We do have a budget that we've never spent it. Could we put out a report earlier in the year outlining the issues that are going to come before town meeting and give people a chance to go to meetings and from whatever committee, whether it's Board of Selectmen, School Committee, Planning Board, if they can actually read those articles and understand them and see what's going on. We don't give anybody any time or any information. And personally, meetings like that, I don't like to attend. If I'm going to come to a meeting and participate, I want to study everything that's going to come before. I understand things come up late in the game. But then again, when do you close the warrant? First of the year, usually? I know you add things as they go, but, you know, there's a bunch of placeholders that are established. But we could be ready a whole lot earlier than we are. There are examples of town finance committees that publish their own report and mail it to the citizens. And it's kind of a walk through the overall financials and their opinions on the warrant articles. I'm not saying we need to go that far, but something like our point of view and with a few more details, I think would be pretty instructive to the voters.
How much does it cost to publish and mail out the warrant itself? Like, I don't imagine it would cost about the same, right?
How much does it cost to publish?
I'd just be completely guessing. I really don't know.
Well, the paper's not expensive.
I think, I also think the elephant in the room is the early date of the town meeting. You know, the 1st of April is like, it just seems it's way too early. If we could push it back like a month to be in line with, say, other towns and really give us the opportunity to, you know, research things or, you know, really dress up these warrant articles, flesh them out, analyze them. I know it's charter limitations, but, you know, so be it. Change the charter.
Is that really going to make a bit of difference, or is anyone, are people just going to say that the new deadline for when we're supposed to get our stuff in is this, and we're going to go right up to the deadline and not get it done?
I think we're veering a little bit off topic in a way.
Yeah.
Tom, you know,
Point of view?
Yes.
I try to come back to his point of view, which is embellished.
I guess following up on the points that Jeff and Jason were commenting on, we know what we spend on the schools. We know how many students there are, so that's an easy arithmetic problem. We know what we spend on seniors. Do we know how many seniors there are in town? Perhaps we do, or pretty good. Some. But, you know, do we know how many people use transportation? How many would? How many people use parking? How many would? So I think we do need to be careful if we start to do this analysis of what we're paying per student, per senior, per parker, per transporter. You need to have a common measurement, and it gets pretty fuzzy.
And it's data that we don't own.
Well, students are very easy to define and identify. Seniors are not. You know, various documents I've seen in this town will count everybody over 50 as a senior. Most of those people are still working for a living and have never been to the senior center.
We do have good data on who goes to the senior center.
Right.
I only throw out those as examples. I mean, you know, if we start off at nothing, we go to one thing 1 year, and then maybe you look at another thing. I think it's a good, remember how hard it was for us to come up with, are we using the mean, the median, or the, you know, I mean, it took us a long, long time to come up with some metrics relative to taxes versus value versus the disposable income And I'm just encouraging the committee to continue to expand on that as statements of the obvious once we get something that we can put our hands on and make it clear to the citizens of the town how our priorities are listed. We
That's
don't
what
have-
a document should do.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Thanks. Liaison assignments. Now, I'm not sure if, I think we have everything covered.
Yeah, I wasn't here, he got
Can't you
everything.
tell now?
Gave you a load.
Oh, yeah? Great.
Yeah, we gave you some assignments.
Okay.
I don't know if they're off the top of my head, because I don't think
I might have written them down.
Board of Selectmen.
Did
Board
we
of
do,
Selectmen.
did
I
we do
think
Board
you
of
got-
Selectmen?
Al got Board of Selectmen.
Okay. I love that everyone's laughing at me, and I'm not sure why. You'll learn.
It's also called the new guys.
So just know if you can't attend, get the word out to us.
Okay.
And somebody will pinch in for you and
Okay.
Or
try
watch
to
it on
go to
TV.
it.
Oh, yeah, you can watch it online.
Oh, I can do this from home?
You can.
That's great.
Just don't fall asleep when you do it, so you,
Be like
You
him
can
every
watch
day.
it
You work from home.
Not so much.
Oh, that's true. Fair enough.
I don't work from home. It's not gonna happen, because it's told by a senior vice president. So, okay. So, is everybody comfortable with their assignments and know what we're doing? And
Could we go down the list?
I didn't write the list down.
Well, somebody did.
We'll go around the room and
All I
say
wrote
what we
down was
think we
that Al got
have.
the Board of Selectmen.
We'll have to take minutes. Brian must have written it down. He's our minute taker.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Well, we've got.
Well, there weren't many changes.
We have Board of Selectmen covered.
That changed.
We've got, school committee was Sahana and myself, we're gonna split it.
Yep.
Sewage was still Dave, transportation is still, was that Dave, right?
I have a couple of them actually too.
Okay,
EDC and Minuteman, Mike.
Mike,
Kelly's Corner and School Budget Committee, Subcommittee,
Christie.
Christie. With a Y, okay.
It's an I, yeah.
ABRSD, Christine and Sahana.
Yeah,
Health Insurance Trust, was that you?
It's me.
Steve. Kelly's Corner. Still doing?
That's still me.
Yeah, excellent. I don't think any of the other ones have changed. What else did
School
you guys-
building committee.
CPC, I'm
School
gonna
building
take from
committee
you.
was
Yeah.
Jason. Was that Tom?
I'm taking CPC.
Tom's jumping into my,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in fairness to Al, the selectman assignment is really, we split it this past year.
yeah.
And that worked better. Those were long meetings, and to do that twice in a month, you may, but it's a commitment.
Okay.
if you start going and you want a partner, let us know, not me.
I mean, it's every
No,
week,
but
right?
don't tell me.
Let
It's
somebody know.
it's every other Tuesday,
Okay.
Monday.
or Monday rather.
Every other Monday?
Yeah, usually right before our Tuesday meeting.
Okay.
If memory
First
serves.
and the third, I think, usually.
Okay.
I think it's the first and the
Yeah,
third.
and we're the second and fourth.
I think that's right, first and third Mondays. Yes.
Right.
And don't forget, you and Christy now have ALG.
Yes.
We have ALG, yes. I'm very much aware of that one. All right, so Finance Committee business, do we have any minutes?
No, assignments.
We're all up to date except for the last meeting. We'll get them to you.
Okay. Any liaison reports? Al, do you have any?
Actually, could I ask a question
Yeah,
on
sure.
Finance Committee business?
Sure.
We had talked about the possibility of having an independent clerk take our minutes for us. Is that something we're still contemplating? Oh, that is Brian?
We have Brian, yes.
Congratulations.
So we find your input valuable, and I found at the
I didn't
last
realize.
couple meetings where you're taking minutes, sometimes you're writing and falling into the same
Live.
trap we were, which is, it's hard to keep up with what's happening.
Wow, right.
So I feel like
You're
we're
good.
losing you
Yeah.
to the same problem that we had with one of us taking
Yeah,
these minutes.
it follows the voice.
Is there any,
I'll let you
Put
know.
that internally and stuff. I mean, the meeting minutes are supposed to be basically the votes of the meeting. It doesn't have to be verbatim.
Right.
Just kind of the gist of the conversation, kind of what was discussed, but
Yeah,
not,
summary of it.
not
Right.
verbatim, and I think that's where people get hung up.
Yeah.
They're saying, well, that's not exactly, well, what was the gist of the conversation?
right,
And was the, you know, and clearly, if there were votes taken, those have to be very
Yeah.
clear, and what vote was taken, and obviously how it was voted, and
But it's not a transcript.
Right.
Just make sure we
Minutes.
keep very clean records.
so do you feel like going forward, you won't be so caught up in minute taking that you'll feel connected to the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and,
Okay.
you know, I mean, I take a lot of notes here, but again, I'm not writing down every word and
No,
she
no,
said,
as you
said,
should
and
not
I
be,
think
of
that's,
course.
we'll give it a shot and see how it goes,
Okay.
so.
Fair enough.
If it doesn't work out, I know that there is a program through the town where for seniors, they get some minimum wage up to a certain number of hours.
$15 an hour, I think.
Yeah.
Or the work program.
The work program, would it be possible to get volunteers to come and do that level of
So-
work?
Again, given the
Okay.
scrutiny around them, don't
I-
you,
I-
we need to be pretty.
Yeah, I think there's a real benefit to having it be someone who does it every year.
Okay.
There is the learning curve on what you have to do, what's the right level. I think having
Yeah.
it rotate every year is going to mean we spend a lot of time dealing with complaints.
Fair enough.
And a lot of them don't like to be out in the evening.
No comment.
I think that's true.
That's
Well,
fair.
we learned Council on Aging you need to do,
At noon.
yes.
I know. Fair enough. It was just a thought.
Tom, you ready for something?
No, that was it.
Okay, so committee reports? That's, would you like to say something?
No, I
Ready.
think your committee report.
Okay, sure. Tom, any committee reports?
None.
Steve?
Nope.
Mike?
Well,
On time-
yes,
on
we always
time and
have
budget?
On
problems.
time, on, but, yeah.
The,
You have pictures?
speaking of Minuteman, we're at the 96% committed of our $145 million budget. Everything is still on schedule.
All in.
We're technically 75% complete. And we'll be actually finished around the end of July. So we're coming down the home stretch. That's why I'm trying to organize a tour on a Wednesday or a Thursday at 4. I'm trying to get a head count and choose the appropriate date when that's most convenient. I could always throw out a date and say, you know, either make it or not make it, but I think there is a lot of interest in town officials, FinCom, and maybe some school committee people that that would like to see the tour, and I think it will be very impressive, and it's just a massive undertaking. The technology that's involved, even the as a precursor to what we're going to go through, you know, in their own backyard in the near future with our dual school project. So I think you'll be impressed.
Mike, 2 questions. Did you say 75% complete? But
Yes.
97%?
96% of our budget
We're
is
getting-
committed.
Oh, committed, okay, not spent.
They let the POs.
Right,
meaning that
right.
the work
Okay,
was
so
let-
no
contract.
issue of an overrun.
Right.
We're, okay. And in your opinion, would it make sense to visit it, tour it now at 75%? Wait till 90, wait till 100?
Or
Is
you
there-
wait till school opens, but I just think, well, it's, you know, you could see it once it's open and once, well, I think you'll be impressed to see some of the behind the scenes stuff, you know, before, you know, they're putting in, like at this stage, the greenhouse arrived last week from, I think it was from Norway. And, you know, the problem they're having, it was, all the parts are metric. So, you know.
Yeah, that happens.
But a vocational school has to be able to handle that.
That's right, that's right.
I
But
guess we can find anybody
they
manufacturing
figured it
parts.
out. It was halfway assembled. It's probably complete now. I asked if, you know, if the instructions came like you, in a form like you would see from, you know,
IKEA.
IKEA.
Wait a minute, didn't come with Allen wrenches?
So
but
it's-
they're figuring it out, and it's, it's really gonna be impressive.
And are these tours scheduled anyway, every Wednesday and Thursday at 4,
No,
and we can go or
no.
not? We need to commit to one?
Right, we need to, because they would, basically, the construction shuts down around 3:30, and they clean up, and then, basically, it'd be the administrators, the project managers, maybe even the superintendent, school superintendent would love to show us around, and explain different things that's going on, the different labs and the culinary arts and advanced manufacturing. It's just, fascinating. And how some of the classrooms are configured. They're configured so that they can be adapted to different uses. So they're just not locked into one function. If the function changes, they have the ability to reconfigure quite easily. That kind of planning that went into it, and I just think you'll find it interesting.
Yeah. Do you want to propose a date by email, see if people can make it, or
Yeah, we can
check calendars?
I did send out some possible dates. The first one starting next Wednesday and next Thursday, and the following 2 weeks.
Okay.
I gotta,
Mike, did you email those? Because I don't have.
yes.
I don't have
Yeah.
that.
You don't read your email from me?
I
I think he goes straight to
searched
spam.
through my emails for an email from you, and I don't have it.
Neither do I.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I can resend it out.
That would
But
be great.
basically,
Yeah.
it would be the best time, according to their staff. Ideally, it would be nice to do it on the weekend, but no one's around on the weekend, plus they're exhausted.
Wednesday or Thursday is more ideal.
Wednesday or Thursday would be the best day starting at 4.
Okay, that'd be
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
I'd be interested.
6 would be better for me, but okay.
And if there's enough people, Brian said he could offer some, he'd hire a limousine or a school bus, whatever's
Doing it
cheap.
right now, I think.
I think it'd be easy to probably meet there. We're all coming from points.
Yep. Any committee updates?
What about?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were already done.
No,
Oh, good. Committee
I
updates.
have-
Go for it.
last Monday I attended the selectmen's meeting.
Oh, how was that?
Oh, wonderful. Of interest, they went over electric aggregation and what they would offer to the town going forward. For those of you who don't know that, we do offer, either you can go through Eversource or you can go through the town's aggregation, and the town offers you various options. And they were offering a 14% renewable energy, which is the standard, 10% additional, 24%, or 100% offering. And town manager is going to send that out to various people because the contract ends in a couple months, and those would be the options that we would offer the town.
Is it a different provider or a?
No, they then shop around for providers that will
Okay.
give you either guaranteed rates for a certain
Period of time.
period of time. Of course, it's quite a confusing process, and I hope that the selectmen will be, they're working very heavily with Green Acton, and they're the ones that are trying to help citizens understand these various options and how much it costs. And on one hand, you think it would be terribly more expensive, but it may only be tenths of a penny per kilowatt, but how many kilowatts do you use? And so it's a difficult thing to navigate, but the selectmen chose to expand the program to allow people to choose the 100%.
It's a 100% option now with the town. Yeah.
I think it is, but the
Because I have it.
24% wasn't offered. I think it was 12%, or 14% is the standard, or 100%. So they're giving somebody the in-between option. And it'll be interesting because the aggregator has to go out and get bids and find out short-term and long-term bids, and we have to decide what happens. And quite frankly, it could be less than Eversource or more, but Eversource has a summer rate and winter rate, and I believe our aggregation is one fixed rate, right, for the whole year.
Yes.
So they try to make it less, sort of the middle, but less, so that it's cheaper to do the aggregation.
So I can get my hand around this. They have an aggregator that goes out on behalf of the town. If the town hires an aggregator, that aggregator goes out to the market and gets all the bids, then brings the best bids back to the town.
Correct. And then we offer it to the citizens whether they want to be in that program, one of the three options, or Eversource, which is a regular provider.
You can opt out at any time.
You can opt out at any time. If there's a problem with the system, Eversource is the one that would fix the poles, and they're the deliverer of the power.
Right.
And everybody, you have no choice. They are the ones you pay for delivery, but the actual kilowatts themselves is part of this aggregate.
The power generation.
Right. Then they talked about briefly about, let's see, we went over the, quote, Maynard Acton housing program that Maynard has now backed out of. Maynard backed out of it for a variety of reasons, many of which were they have alternative housing that they're developing at the old Powder Mill Road digital facility area. So it was going to be 254 units for 2 towns. We were going to provide the water, they were going to provide sewer. Now it's going to be only on Acton property, and there'll be 225 units. Acton will have to provide both sewer and water. 10% of the units will be this is all preliminary. 10% will be 3-bedroom, 25% will be affordable. It's rental, therefore all 225 would count towards our 40B. And I thought of you immediately, Jason.
Thank you.
When I heard
Thank you.
Well, about the 10% 3-bedroom.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like there'd be that many children in the schools and playing on it. The one, they have a parking garage that would be, I guess it would be, instead of several 2-story buildings, it's going to have a 3-story building. But they were going to have parking that would go next to the building and be up 3 stories, so people could walk out.
Maybe there's more stories than that, actually.
Well, maybe it's 4, but to be able to walk out to their cars parked level, instead of having everybody go all the way down the basement, go into an elevator, and then go all the way back up to parking, there'd be access from each of the floors, which I thought was good, and certainly would promote senior kind of rentals. And the only thing that's a little bit tricky from our perspective, but we now would be required to do sewering, which would mean beefing up some of our sewer abilities and lift stations to get that many people on board. There would be an extension of the sewer. I'm sure there'll be some discussion among some of the people who own property along the sewer line, because they would have to pay the betterment, even if they don't hook up to the sewer. And but they're working on some compromises. For example, I guess once in a blue moon we have some excess effluent that goes into the sewer, and they have to sort of store it until they can process it. And with this additional units online, they believe that might happen more frequently or be a bigger demand. And so as part of the trade-off with the developers in the town, I understand that there may be some holding tanks that might be built and the developer might pay for, that would allow the town to have the capacity in terms of that handling like a major storm, and it's just a ton of water that's going to the facility. I mean, because if you think about it, you wouldn't want to build a facility big enough to handle a 100-year storm worth of water coming through to go totally through the system without a hiccup. It would be much more efficient to build a right-sized facility and then have a couple of holding tanks so that once in 100 years.
I understood the sewer line would be put in by the developer. That's what I understood.
Where's the nearest
Well,
substation?
remember,
Mr. Benson can probably answer some of those questions.
Where's the nearest substation currently?
The,
Sewage
Powder
treatment
Mill.
plant.
Here,
Where's
Powder
the
Mill.
nearest sewage treatment?
Pardon me.
Adams,
Yeah. Have to be
Where?
on the street.
Adams Street.
Adams Street,
Off
it's
of
right,
High Street.
yeah,
It's a
it's
main-
off
Yeah.
of High Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too far away.
That's just on it.
Yeah.
So there's not gonna be a lot of people who have to pay the betterment at all.
No.
No,
It's an incredibly industrial area with almost
of it's
no
commercial.
residents.
Yeah.
well, there's the marijuana place.
So anyway, they discussed that, and the last order of business was the Veteran Services District. It's interesting because the last couple of meetings, a couple of months ago, when I was at the Selectmen, the Veteran Service District was brought up, and it was the first time I got up and spoke at the Selectmen meeting, and I just encouraged them to be careful about Boxborough and their history of perhaps not paying based on what they committed to, and there's a big difference between buying the horse and selling the horse, and that they ought to be very careful about the pricing of the veteran services and not be just his salary, but all the other things that go into it. So today, at the last meeting, it was said that a tentative agreement was made with Boxborough and that the selectmen were going to get the particulars in the next week or two for a July 1st start date. I felt compelled to get up to the microphone on behalf of this committee again and say, would you please share that with your finance committee so that we can give you good counsel on whether you have in fact priced it right and whether there are any other kinds of problems that we can help you avoid. There was no comment from the selectmen based on my input. I don't know if you've gotten it from them, Mr. Chairman, but I did happen to see the veterans agent at the senior center and at their health fair, and he mentioned that they were going to take 10% of all his line items in his veterans budget, and that's what they were going to charge Boxborough. Of course, he's 34 hours. 10% would be 3.4 hours, and Boxborough is signing up for 4 hours. So right away they get a nice little discount. In addition, I'm not sure, Brian, whether the veterans budget includes OPEG and other things that the town accountant has in his budget, so therefore we're being short-shrift on that. And lastly, I have no clue as to how frequently Boxborough would be paying the town, and based on some prior experience, I would encourage the town to get a, 1 month at the most accounts receivable, and that we get paid on a monthly basis and not at the end of the year. So, again, Mr. Chairman, I'm giving you some information. You probably should reach out. I would encourage you to examine the contract and see if 12% would be a better number, or 15%, and/or
I was thinking
whether we
50
should,
would be better. but-
or whether we should, there are other significant lines like OPEG that are not, in fact, included in the number. In fairness, at least they included the secretaries, 10% of secretary, 10% of all the phone, 10% of all the other kinds of things, but not maintenance necessarily, because that's in probably the town maintenance budget. There are probably other items that I'm overlooking.
I have asked the town manager to he wants to come in and talk to us about the North Acton Fire Station. I asked him at the same time to also discuss that with us as well, the Veterans Affairs officer.
Well, I'm just letting you know that first or second meeting in June of the selectmen, they will be voting on it. So, and I know we have no authority on it, but I implored them to use their advisory group to help them understand what the real cost was.
Yes, I had been asking also to have John come and present that with us.
That's, I got it from.
Having read some of Boxborough's Finance Committee minutes relatively recently, I do have a life. I don't just do that sort of stuff. They will get a significant increase in their reimbursement from the state when they have more of a full-time veteran services official person. So it is to their benefit to have this happen, which might be another way to get them to pay more, because there are the fixed costs of having an employee that it sounds like we're not sharing. We are effectively offering consulting service on that without covering the general costs. So yes, I wholeheartedly support getting more information about this, ideally before a vote happens, if we can. On my reports, Kelly's Corner has not had another meeting for a while now. I was able to attend our first ALG meeting for the new term, and we basically came up with the rules of how we'll be doing things. There's not a real change to that particularly. The town manager said that they are working hard to replenish reserves. There was a lot of concern about how low our reserves had gotten, specifically because the finance department has gotten calls from the ratings agencies because of having taken out loans in the past. They can call, and they've taken to proactively calling the town to find out where we are relative to different accounts and why we are there. And they expressed some concern about how low the reserves had gotten in this past time. They were happy once Steve got to talk to them. And Brian could tell us, I suspect, more about this too. They seemed happy by the end of the call. They seemed happy by the end of the call about the presentation of...
There was some reservation or some concerns about the reserve use for the operating budget, but in the big picture, they were pleased with Acton's financial status. They reaffirmed the AAA bond rating, but again, cautioned because of the amount of reserves that are being used annually. They didn't want to see the reserve position going any further below the $2.6 million right now in free cash. With $2 million in stabilization, they understand that, you know, S&P has a presence here in Massachusetts, unlike Moody's, which is not. So they kind of have a little bit of understanding of a little more how municipal government works here than Moody's does. But I think in the big picture, they were fairly pleased. But we just, you know, got to use caution and reserves. And I know Mr. Mangiarati is really trying to look at that through the ALG process and how we mitigate the use of reserves and try to keep that at a minimum. So that's going to be a big ALG discussion going forward.
He said that they are he's meeting with every department there, and maybe finances too, frequently to get as much turned back as we can this year, get the reserves back up.
Excellent.
Was this an opening salvo within the ALG to potentially suggest that this is going to be the year of both a capital override and an operating override?
No. I've been told so far. My pushback on the, okay, but things aren't going to stay sunny forever, was that there was not an expectation that there would be any problems. This was really a getting to know you meeting. I have set up that I'm going to push them on things. I will bring that next time.
Thank you.
Get an explicit answer. The schools are looking at about a 1.5% turn back, which is good for them, building up the stabilization fund as they've been, had told us they were going to do. One second. Oh, they do understand that the rating agency, I think S&P specifically, was saying they understand that a decrease in the town's reserves with an increase in the district reserves isn't a problem. That it's been something that had to be explained explicitly because the school district is no longer specifically part of the town. And that's what I have right now on that.
Did they make any comment whether the rating is on negative watch or not, or?
If the rating.
The rating, the AAA rating, it's sustained, but are we on watch?
We're not
Or-
on watch.
No, okay.
Christine?
The school committee did vote to move $1 million to the capital stabilization fund because they are expecting 1.5 in variance, and then it'll still keep their reserves high.
Did they say where their E&D is gonna come in with $1 million in stabilization?
They're still looking at being close to the threshold.
4.5?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have two things I'd like to bring up with regard to liaison reports. The first is the Acton Foxborough Regional School District School Building Committee. We are currently, we have submitted the PSR, which is one of the statutory levels that we have to be at for the MSBA. We're waiting to hear back on that. That said, so we are squarely into the phase of trying to do the actual design. So the thing that we argued with at our last meeting is how to make a potentially 3-story building feel not 3 stories tall. So this is the level of design work that we're working on now.
Big trees.
Digging a hole is not an option considering the water issues we're dealing with on the Gates property, so how dare you?
What, there's not gonna be a swimming pool?
The other thing that was brought up is that there is the belief on the part of the school building committee that the MSBA does not fully understand and appreciate the concept of a twin school. And as a result, there has been an invitation for all of the members of the MSBA who are involved in our particular project to come and see the Parker Damon building in action with at least one of the principals and multiple members of staff to really understand what a twin school and multiple school programs cohabitating inside the same building really feels like. I have not heard back on the results of that. That meeting did occur within the last couple of weeks. We will find out the results of that meeting in tomorrow night's meeting.
So MSBA came out to visit with Parker Damon.
With Parker Damon. So that's so stay tuned for that one. But there was definitely we're well into the design phase at this point, but there's definitely some concern about whether or not the MSBA fully understands and appreciates the twin school. The second thing I'd like to bring up, while not officially a liaison report, is project graduation is a week from Friday, and they are still looking for volunteers. So if anybody has kids in the school district and wants to prepay for when their kids are going to be at project graduation, because you can't volunteer when your kid is graduating, by all means, time to come pay it forward now. And if you've already had your kids go through the school district, you want to see what the product of the ABRSD is, all in a lighthearted environment. Well, we're still looking for volunteers for project graduation the week from Friday. I will be dealing, and I will be wearing my tuxedo. So please, by all means, come join me.
What is project graduation?
Project graduation is the all-night party where the seniors basically get locked in the high school, so that to avoid the temptation of drinking and driving and carousing and going crazy. It's an organized party with lots of volunteer help, with all kinds of activities, and there's a casino and all the rest of that fun stuff to try and have a safe party atmosphere for graduation night, for around the graduation time. And it's project graduation is the big party. It's a week from Friday the 7th, and we still need a couple more volunteers. So come on down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Al?
I have nothing yet.
But you'll be on the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have anything to report we should be aware of?
There is one update from the EDC. The Methodist Machines in North Acton will be having a grand opening in, I think it's June the 5th. So I think that's just good news that our manufacturing base is growing here in Acton, and
What do they do, and what are they grand opening?
I'll let you know on June the 6th.
Fair enough.
They make computer-aided design equipment, you know.
They've been there for a long time.
They've been there
really,
for a
haven't
while.
But they went through a major expansion, or renovation, and
they? Oh, yeah, the building's a lot different than it did a couple of years
So yeah, you can design something on a computer now, and you can send it in code over to one of their machines, and it just makes the part.
ago. They cloned myself to sit here and do like this.
and you can learn those skills at Minuteman Vocational. Huh?
Do they partner with Minuteman, do you know?
Oh, they will be. Yeah.
Mike will make
Part
sure
of the
that.
Acton Manufacturing Consortium.
Great. Mr. Benson? Now you had some comments for us this evening.
Yes, okay, so a couple of
In my former life, I bought about 5
updates and a
machines,
statement.
so I know what they do.
With respect to the school, the twin school vote, both the town meeting vote and then the town-wide vote, at our ALG meeting last week, Marie Altieri, tentative target would be a December 10 town meeting, followed by a town-wide election a week later on the 17th. There is a requirement from the MSBA that the town votes have to take place 120 days, within 120 days of MSBA's approval of the project. So that's a good and sensible time frame. At one of your post-town meetings, there was concerns expressed about how soon the timeliness of the towns providing the finance committee with warrant articles. So I reached out to Brian and Steve Barrett as to whether we can get ahead of the curve and we can have a meeting between you people and Brian and Steve. And I reached out to Roland. He thought it was a very good idea. So if I could just, I'll send a note out tonight, assuming people would be on for this, to Brian and Steve and to Roland, and if you people could coordinate on a date and put your team together. I think we were thinking of Christy and Roland and Steve to meet with Steve and Brian and start to iron out some of those rough spots. But let's do it ahead of the high budget season. On the powder mill project, it will be a friendly 40B. It's not going to be a contested one. The town is going to support it. Both the Acton Community Housing Corporation and the selectmen have both signed on to the project. So the developer is now off to his chosen state agency to get what's called the lip letter of approval. And that should probably take a couple of months. And then after that, he can put in his application for his comprehensive permit. Then once the comprehensive permit is approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, that would put us over the, would put us over the 10% threshold based on the 2010 census and within striking distance of the number we anticipate. Coming out of the 2020 census, that number would be known probably in the fall of 2021.
How many stories is that building?
I think it's 4. That's how he got the additional 45 units. Yeah.
Mr. Benson, I think you said it was 225 units?
Yeah.
Do we have an initial guesstimate of the number of school-age students? School-age children?
Well, no.
Possible to tell.
Because at the last couple of times that we had, especially when we did Kelly's Corner, there was the guesstimate of number of students as given by the developer. Has the developer made a declaration at this time?
No, not to my knowledge. Nothing was presented at our meeting or the ACHC meeting.
Thank you.
So with that, I had mentioned in an earlier report that at our our select board's April 8th meeting, this was our first meeting after town meeting, that I raised the question as a follow-on to Article 38. That was the non-binding article on Kelly's, on the town purchasing the Kmart parcel, that we should make an effort to reach out to Stop and Shop and see how we might be able to partner together in a redevelopment of the parcel. And the select board gave me the limited authority to reach out and begin that discussion. So this was my first report. So let me just read it. On Friday, May 3rd, John Mangiarotti, Kristen Gouchard, and I met with Frank Maglio, the Director of Real Estate Development at Stop and Shop, and Katie Enright of the engineering design firm of Howard, Stein, and Hudson. The meeting took place in Town Hall. Kristen took Mr. Maglio and Mr. Enright and Miss Enright through the infrastructure plan. A discussion ensued as to what those changes might mean to trucks entering and moving around the parcel necessary to satisfy what is being done on the parcel today. We segued into a conversation of how the town and Stop and Shop might work together on the redevelopment of the 6-acre parcel, with Kmart's lease ending in April 2021. I explained, in my view, there would be little citizen support for a rezoning of the parcel without knowing what would be going on the parcel. I added, again in my view, that a large-scale residential condominium or rental apartment complex would be a near certain non-starter. In addition, I mentioned with the Powder Mill Apartments 40B project now proceeding, the town would reach its 10% affordable housing figure and should be in easy striking distance of the reset number from the 2020 census. I shared the ideas for the parcel informally offered by citizens, which included green space, quality restaurants, upscale retail shops, and a community/rec center. Mr. Maglio expressed his interest in exploring ideas that created value for the town and also created value for Stop and Shop. Mr. Maglio underscored the point that tenant rents were necessary to support future development of the parcel. We need to keep in mind one option available to Stop and Shop would be to re-tenant the Kmart building and add store space consistent with existing zoning. The conversation ended cordially. We left it Stop and Shop would get back to us after its internal discussions. So any comments on?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Could you bring us up to speed on the status of the parcel we authorized to purchase for parking at the train station?
Oh, yeah, okay. We were doing our due diligence on the parcel. The environmental group that looked at it said there may be some chemicals that have been dropped there over the years. So they were doing a second round of testing to determine exactly what's there and what level of cleanup, if any, is necessary. I mean, we're not talking about building housing down there. It would likely remain, a parking lot with the potential, if you took down the existing buildings there, adding another 38 to 40 spaces, which would certainly be my goal. Anything? Yeah.
I had a question on the part of the
Tom.
project.
Yeah.
It sounds like this has shifted from being a straddle the two towns project to now just being in Acton.
Correct.
Maynard's
Yeah,
out.
Maynard's out.
Okay. Are we taking more land in Acton then, or reducing the project size?
No, the original idea was 180 units in Acton. How we got it up to 225 was to add an additional floor, going from three floors to 4.
Thank
Yeah, I just want to add that with regard to the Kmart property, being proactive with the property owner is a terrific strategy, and you're not leaving. I think it would go a lot with the relationship with them, that if they know the town is very interested, very concerned, and very willing to work with them, it could make our life very easy, or much easier, and that if we do come up with a strategy for that site, it would be easier to implement that strategy, having a positive and cordial relationship with the owners, so that, both the interests of both parties would get addressed.
Well, that was the spirit of the conversation.
Terrific.
And, it's tricky because Mr. Maglio oversees 150 Stop and Shop parcels, around New England. So he doesn't actually, take the Kmart parcel to bed with him every night. But in this current development cycle, what they're all doing are these 150, 250, rental complexes, and we just try to put the brake on them right at the start. That's not where we're going to go on that. And then his point is it's got to work for us too. And he was tossing out some ideas about it. He said, how do we have the school campus there? Could we put things on there that would draw kids there? With the idea of restaurants, would people actually come back there, in the evening? And John and I, assured him that if you build things that will be popular, people will come. So it was a good conversation, but they have to, go through their internal discussions.
Thank you.
One other follow-up question on the powder mill development. I'm assuming that the only reason a 4-story building or more was allowed is because it's 40B, because isn't there a zoning restriction or a limitation of 3 stories?
That's my understanding, yes.
So
the best part
if
of
you
town
have
to do it.
a 40B project, they have carte blanche to do almost anything they want.
It's tough. They can go high and deep, and but it was very uplifting.
It looks like a very cool project.
Yeah, I mean the design looks very good.
So they're going to get better after that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. At our last meeting, I noted that I would be traveling extensively between next year's special and regular town meetings. I noted that Massachusetts law allows for a member of the committee to virtually attend its meetings using the internet. I requested that Brian find out more about how this could be done so that I could test the process this summer. At the volunteer award ceremony, and by the way, congratulations, Steve.
Thank
you. Got
you.
an award. At that ceremony, I by chance met the new town moderator and our new chairman. They said that they had discussed my situation, and they concluded that they did not support having a virtual member on the committee during that 3-month period. Although I feel I could do my homework and continue to contribute remotely, I certainly understand their decision. So based on their wishes, I have reluctantly agreed to resign from this committee. That said, I feel that it is best that I do not wait and resign after the special town meeting and before I travel. I've decided to resign now so that a new member of the committee can be added and get up to speed during the summer and fall. So tonight will be my last meeting as a member of the Acton Finance Committee. I'd like to thank Don McKenzie, who first appointed me to this committee 40 years ago. It gave me a taste of how fulfilling such a position could be. And thanks also to Peter Ashton for placing me on this committee 2 years ago, giving me the opportunity to once again participate in this great town government that we call Acton. I'd like to thank my fellow members for their friendship and for their knowledgeable, well-reasoned, and especially civil discussions on the issues. Civility is something that we desperately need in this world, and I can say without exception this committee has demonstrated that tremendously. I also appreciate the support given to me by the town's employees that have made it possible for me to do my job, especially you, Brian. Thank you. To the viewing audience, thank you for taking the time to become informed about the issues we face in our committee. I hope that my questions and my contributions to the committee's discussions have helped you better understand the many facets of Acton's complex financial condition. The new town moderator will be seeking my replacement. I am a strong believer in having people with diverse financial expertise and experiences on this board. Since I am the only CPA here, I hope that a CPA CFO out there will step up and submit their name to the town's volunteer committee. Again, thank you all for the great experience I've had over these last 2 years. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Jeff for his service to the committee and to the town.
Here.
And enjoy your travels.
Is there any other committee business this evening? Al?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Who's David?
Adjourned.
I know.